Craig, nice to have you on the show again. Welcome, mate. Nice. What have you been up to?
I was actually up fishing on the weekend. We had a beautiful weekend down here, so I went up to the lakes fishing, but back into work now, so back to usual.
Are you a full-time mayor or a part-time mayor?
Oh, pretty much full-time, Michael. The job takes up it's pretty much full-time these days.
Oh, gosh, I was able to do part-time when I was mayor of Wanganui, and I think I would have had to kill myself if I was full-time. How do you make work seriously? I suppose you've got a big area. Just remind us how big the Waimate, geographically, the Waimate District Council is, please, Craig.
Yeah, so basically we run from the Waitaki River in the south up as far as the Periora River in the north, just south of Timaru, and then we run right back up to Lake Benmore. So geographically a huge area, but of course obviously not a lot of people. A big roading network, like if you stretch all our roading network on end to be able to drive from here to Auckland, it's the same distance. So lots of challenges with roading and stuff like that.
And what is the population of Waimate? Of the district?
Population of the district's about 8,500 people, about 4,000 people in town and about 4.5 spread around the district.
Okay, and how many ratepayers? How many rateable properties?
About 4,000 rateable properties.
Right, and so that includes...
Not a lot.
No, not at all. I'm just thinking of your roading network alone.
Yeah,
All right, now, so... And Waimate's never been a particularly industrial area, but you're now going to get, and that's what we're talking about, a potential industrial plant operating. Now, is it operating at a place called Glenavy? Is that right? Have I got that right?
Yeah, it's operating just north. Well, if it goes ahead, it's going on a piece of land just north of Glenavy, adjacent to just a couple of 500 metres off the state highway, basically, maybe a bit more than that, a kilometre off the state highway.
And this is a factory that, if it were built, and that's what we're talking about now, will burn waste, the stuff that would normally end up in rubbish landfills and then extruding methane and a whole series of other grievies. It will burn that waste and convert that waste into electricity. That's the idea, isn't it?
Yeah, so basically it's what they call a waste-to-energy plant. So basically it takes all the non-recyclable rubbish and, as you said, it burns it. They obviously create steam, which generates electricity, and that's how my understanding, that's how it works.
So as mayor, I would imagine one of the first people they'd come and talk to would be you. Did they?
Yes, they did. They spoke to us very early on. Obviously, it was just in the sort of proposal stage when they first spoke to us. So that was, quite some time ago now. Okay.
Now, the next issue is for you were going to have to process their consent. So that's the Waimate District Council. You need to, if you need anything like that, you need obviously to have a consent. Do they need a resource consent as well from the Canterbury Regional Council?
Yes, it was. It was Canterbury Regional Council, and realistically, the part that we play in the consent process is quite small. It's just around the actual building and amenities and things like that. All their consents that are the contentious ones are obviously through Environment Canterbury, which is around water use and discharge to air.
Right. So... and here's the next question I've got of you. What did the District Council in Waimate have a particular view as to whether this was a good thing or a bad thing?
No, we didn't have a particular view on it. We've stated all the way through that, obviously being the consenting authority, we can't say it's good or it's bad because that's not the way that it's done. But as I said, we play a small part in the consent around, the majority of the consent conditions and detail was through Environment Canterbury.
Now, the other thing, of course, though, is that this has suddenly become very large, and the Minister of the Environment, David Parker, has what's known as called in the resource or called in the plan. Now, can you explain what that means?
So basically what happens now, rather than us appointing a joint commissioner with Environment Canterbury to hear the consent applications, has now been called in by the minister because they believe this is of national significance. And the other thing too, it's an incredibly complicated consent process. And quite frankly, I've read parts of the consent and I get lost pretty quickly when it comes to all the technical detail in it. So what happens now is that the minister has called it in. It will either go straight before an environment court or through the minister will appoint some people to hear the consent on behalf of the government, basically now.
Now, we'll talk about why it might be nationally significant in a moment. But just on that issue, does that mean that now the minister's called it in and probably the Environment Court would be the quickest way to deal with it? Just thinking, does that mean that Waimate District Council at that stage can have an opinion, or are you just still going to stay out of that issue?
No, we do. We will have an opinion, obviously. And listen, I've spoken to a lot of ratepayers. There's a group of the community that are adamantly opposed to it. There's a group of the community that are in favour of it. So our role now will be, now that it's been called in, we'll have an opportunity to submit on the consent, and we will do that, and we will put all the views of our community forward for that consenting process.
So you don't intend to say yes or no, we want it or we don't want it, or will you more likely go, well, if you go ahead with it, we would like these conditions imposed?
Yeah, and the thing with me is, I guess I've got some serious concerns over, if it goes ahead, there needs to be some very strict conditions around the consent. In particular, we're concerned about where the waste is coming from. We would not like to see the importation of waste from overseas to fuel this thing. And the other thing that I think that we would be looking for too is 24-hour live consent monitoring, so that way we believe there needs to be like a website set up so people could go on any time of the day or night and check that they're not in breach of their consent and what's coming out of the stacks. So those are just some of the issues that I personally think we would need to look very seriously at.
But if that waste was not to come from overseas, because my understanding was that the company that's set up is intending to get waste from Queenstown, their landfill's almost full, Craig. Gosh, Dunedin, as we know, has got massive problems with their landfill in terms of consents and things like that. Timaru. If they could all be trucked to Glenavy, burned, turned into electricity, it sort of seems a perfect solution, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's almost in the too good to be true basket, Michael.
Yeah.
It's like, and I know that these things, like I've read a lot about them, and there's, as I said, there's pros and cons, but I know that there's a lot of these plants work overseas that work well. I also know that there's plants that they have had issues with. So, I guess my thing is that no matter what happens, we need to change our waste behaviour, because we cannot just keep burying our residual waste.
Yeah.
As you said, there's lots of challenges in Dunedin, and if you've only got to look at, was it Tome Valley up your way?
Yeah.
There was massive debate over that. So no matter what happens, we need to change the way that we deal with our waste, and whether that's a greater recycling, I don't know whether long term that's can be a big fix for the problem. I think that we need to stop a lot of this rubbish that's actually coming into the country. All the stuff that's coming in from overseas, from the likes of these online sites. That's just we're just exporting our good stuff and importing all the rubbish.